Even dictators need friends, and the bromance between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin has been going strong for over a decade. Russia was Xi's first foreign trip in office, and they've now met 40 times. During the Beijing Olympics, they declared there was no limit to their friendship. Then, just days later, Russia invaded Ukraine, catching China by surprise. But dear friends, as they call each other, stick together. This was the Chinese leader in Moscow this afternoon, Putin's first visitor since the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for him last week.
China attaches great importance to China-Russia relations because we are each other's biggest neighbouring country, as well as strategic partners.
The reason the world is watching this public display of affection, of course, its possible impact on the war in Ukraine.
We have carefully studied your proposals on settling the acute crisis in Ukraine. You're aware that we're always open to a negotiation process.
Away from the sweet talk on the battlefield, Russia is making marginal gains, edging closer to taking the blood-soaked city of Bakhmut after months of frenzied assaults. The war is not going Putin's way. He's exhausting his manpower and resources. A humiliating defeat for Russia and a victory for America and its allies does worry China. The US has warned Xi is considering sending weapons to Putin, but many analysts are more cautious.
Much of the priority for this visit will be given on the diplomatic support, firstly, that Beijing can offer Russia. I think Beijing will just carry on conducting the normal trade agreement with Moscow, but not necessarily increasing the level of so-called civil-military complex equipment and sending it to Moscow.
Russia's exports to China have soared over the past year by nearly 50%, taking bilateral trade to a record high of $190 billion and helping Russia offset some of the damage from Western sanctions. But that pales in comparison to China's links with the European Union, valued at more than 4 times that. That relationship would be at risk if China began providing Russia with lethal aid. But China has been happy to hold military drills like this one in the Gulf of Oman alongside Russian forces, and has been exporting dual-use technology already. But China is now also positioning itself as a peacemaker on the global stage, recently brokering a resumption of ties between arch-rivals Saudi Arabia and Iran. China has issued a 12-point proposal on the conflict in Ukraine, though its calls for an abandonment of a Cold War mentality have led it to be dismissed in the West.
Many of the global South countries do not see these wars eye to eye as the collective West. So I think what China is trying to do is trying to save its reputation with the global South, and also somehow try to taking the momentum that it could possibly play a mediation role between Russia and Ukraine.
Xi Jinping is scheduled to have a call with Ukraine's President Zelensky, but his stance is one of pro-Russian neutrality. And in any case, for now, both sides seem set on attempting to make more gains on the ground.
Well, I've been speaking to the Democratic Party US Congressman Bill Keating, who's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the Armed Services Committee. And I started by asking him why the US government is concerned by Xi's visit to Russia.
First worry is that somehow it will result in China giving arms to Russia in its aggression against Ukraine. I think that's unlikely. But the second concern is somehow trying to back a proposal that would freeze the illegal territory that Russia seized and somehow cast that out as an agreement for a ceasefire, which anything of that nature really isn't an agreement. And we have to remember, China's really not in a position to mediate this issue because they've taken Russia's side.
I mean, if you think that China can't broker any kind of peace because it's taken Russia's side, then obviously the US and NATO countries couldn't broker any peace for the same reason, because they've taken Ukraine's side. Well, who could?
Certainly, let's not forget this. Putin can end this with a phone call immediately. So he's the aggressor. China can modify where they are as part of the agreement. But any agreement that China, and certainly the 12 points they have now, they all indicate that that land that was illegally gathered because of really the first major aggression since World War II in Europe remains with Russia. So I think that's what I meant in terms of they can't be honest brokers, because when you start with that as a premise, you've already, I think, ceded any moral authority to be a mediator.
If you step back from this, I mean, the relationship between the US and China is seemingly getting worse. I mean, whose failure is that?
Well, I think it's important, number one, that discussions always occur, because even if you have competing countries with different interests, dialogue is important. And I think that's what you're going to see with the postponed visit, coming to fruition in terms of the two sides agreeing with each other. But I think that what we're seeing globally is really a contest with the authoritarian countries and the democratic countries.
And do you think this President Biden, what is his foreign policy goal in terms of China? Is it to normalize and to improve relations, or is it to be prepared to see confrontation if that's where it's going?
Certainly the U.S.'s position is not to seek confrontation unnecessarily. I believe that we're going to be strong together, meaning the Western side. One of the things that, as you look at the whole situation since Russia's aggression against Ukraine, it's brought the Western countries together. But they're together not just militarily. You're looking at the energy issues that we've worked out together, so that Russia can't use energy as a weapon of war. You're looking at the beginnings of trade with the Technology Council together, moving forward on issues. So I'm not afraid of competition. I don't think the U.S. is afraid of competition with China. You can't ignore China in this world. But rather than just be responsive, rather than just watch what they're doing, the message I'm getting from so many countries and leaders I talk to throughout the world is for the U.S. and our European allies to show up, be there, be a part of the things economically that China is trying to move forward to on their own, to use not just for economic gain, but to use it for a political wedge and greater authoritarian rule.
And when it comes to China, how much difference do you honestly think there is between the Democrats and the Republicans? How worried should Europe be about forthcoming American elections?
Well, I think that there's a concern. I'll be honest with you, as I've talked to leaders around the world, there was a concern over the 4 years of the Trump administration, frankly, and the pragmatism and some of the actions that were taken that were divisive. Some of the ambassadorships and some of the other statements that were made that frankly did not respect our allies across the seas. But I do think that those years won't be repeated. And I can say that with great surety.
Congressman, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.